No, you don't need to adjust your computer dials. Okay, Nate Perkins, is that a thing? Is adjusting? I guess that just shows how old I am. Talking like adjusting your TV dial on a computer. I guess it's your settings, right? Your contrast and all that. Whatever it is, you don't need to adjust it. This is not a Disc Golf Pro Tour broadcast or something like that. This isn't some kind of a subversive episode of Tournament Central. This is just Grant from PDGA Radio and Nate Perkins from the Disc Golf Network hanging out. So, hey, Nate, welcome.
Good to see you, Grant. Thanks for having me on here.
That might be the worst introduction I have ever done, but I'm going to go with it. Nate, I'm actually talking to you in your house, and this is a podcast people can listen to on audio platforms, or they can be watching us on YouTube right now. So that looks like, even from this angle, that's a unique house. Where are you coming to me from? What's this?
Well, it's my tiny home. It's a little tiny home subdivision in Bend, Oregon. There's my kitchen, my loft, and I'll show you guys
my kitchen, my loft, my bedroom.
Yep. There's my backyard, all the pine trees, some more tiny homes across the way.
That is the best.
It's really cool. I met my partner at the Masters Cup just like last year, the players party for the Masters Cup. I met this woman and we fell in love really quick. She flew up to Portland for an event and traveled with me in the van. We fell in love, and then by the fall we were moving in together, and we didn't know where in the country we wanted to live. And
but wherever it is, let's live in 500 square feet.
Yeah, she brought up a tiny home in Bend, and we just signed a lease without seeing it, and we showed up here, and it's the coolest place ever. The builder's main house is like maybe 80 yards away from us, and they're Tolkien fans, and so their backyard is built based off of Hobbiton.
I was going to say,
yeah,
it's got to be.
This is like the Shire basically. So we live on Wizard Lane, and then next door is a Shire Lane, and then Ring Bearer Court.
No, that's the best thing I've ever heard.
It's really cool.
My dream home, my wife will tell you this, my dream home. Now I have 3 kids though. So, I might have to wait until they're grown and gone before I really get, but my dream home is something of a tiny home, but with like a garage. So like the thing I have envisioned in my head is like an A-frame, for example, so that the actual living space is very basic and very, very much like what you just showed, but then maybe put it on stilts so that the lower level below the A-frame is like an enclosed, open sort of multi-car garage / shop / studio. And
love that.
It's the irony is, if you want a place to, to park things or to store things or to have tools and work with your hands or whatever, you need just raw space, but then to actually live in and sleep in and sort of do life in, you don't necessarily need as much space. So, but nobody makes houses like that really. No, if you want a lot of garage, you're usually going to have to get a lot of house. And if you want not a lot of house, you're almost never going to get any kind of garage or any kind of shop. So I want to invent that. My biggest goal is, have you ever seen these Route 66 like gas stations from back in the day?
Sure.
The really old cool ones, like in the movie Cars or something. I want to get one of those that just has the little shop and then the little garage door where they used to do oil changes, and just gut it and renovate it and turn the little shop part into the house, and then the little garage part, leave it as a garage, and that be the whole dwelling.
I like it.
I think that would be really unique.
Yeah. You got some builders there in Oklahoma.
Hey, speaking of Oklahoma, since you showed me your house, let me show you something kind of cool here. You'll get a kick out of this because you always bring us, when you're on the network, you always bring us like weather details and
I'm
really cool observations, right? That the viewer can't feel or can't really see necessarily. Check this out. I don't know if you've been watching the news a lot lately. We actually had a tornado here in my town. Now in Oklahoma, we tend to sprawl even in our towns and our suburbs. So it was 10 solid miles from my house, but it's same town, same address. And there was a tornado, and barely didn't have to go to our shelter, but I came out in my yard the next day. This is a chunk
Wow.
of sheet metal of some kind. It looks like it came off of a barn,
Wow.
and it was out in
Scary.
the middle of my backyard and nothing else. No other debris, no other anything, no damage in my neighborhood.
Mm,
So that suggests this got lifted, right? 10 miles away, and it went thousands of feet up in the atmosphere in the tornado. And then eventually what goes up must come down. And this one random piece. So I
that's
kept it just
scary,
as
Grant.
a,
It's
yeah, I
way
kept
worse
it
than
as
getting hit
kind
with a
of,
disc.
yeah, way worse to get is. Yeah,
Oof.
this would hurt. I wonder how stable this is when you,
I'm thinking
but
overstable.
I kept it as a reminder of, as much as I love storms, there's still a respect factor and like
Mm,
an honor the factor that it can destroy people's property. And that's of course not something you love, even if you think the storm itself is beautiful. Right.
yeah.
So I thought I'd keep this. And so anyway,
Well, I'm glad everyone's okay.
yeah, that's just kind of life around here. You guys in Oregon, you deal with like extreme, rain systems that eventually cause
Mm.
flooding and mudslides and things. Do you deal with that kind of issue?
Well, we're in Bend, so we're on the east side of the Cascade Range. So
Mm-hmm.
we're in the high desert. So we're in a bit of a rain shadow. So it's like 300 days of sunshine here in the city that I live in. I'd
Sounds
say
terrible.
the biggest thing is wildfires.
Oh,
And
right. Sure.
yeah, but those are semi-natural. I feel like they get
Right.
bigger because of our fire suppression. So they're actually doing a controlled burn right now, and you can see some smoke a couple hundred miles away or so. But it's outside of that, and every now and then the active volcano. But that's
Okay,
every
that's cool.
every few thousand years. But yeah, from right outside my house, you can see some volcanoes with some snow on them.
Still, and it's,
Yeah,
mid to late May and there's still
yeah.
snow
Oh, they're
up at
still skiing.
altitude.
Yeah.
People are still skiing?
Oh yeah. Still
Really?
skiing. Yeah. One of my good buddies, Eric, he's a disc golfer. He's on day like 110 or something of hitting the mountain.
Wow. I guess if you
Yeah.
live far enough north and you get at enough elevation, yeah, all the ski places that are within reasonable distance of me have fairly truncated, like Taos, New Mexico and Angel Fire, New Mexico, and even a few into Colorado. They tend to have slightly truncated seasons and really
Hmm.
defined end. I think part of it though is even if there's snow, they still end the season because
Yeah.
things get really unstable and everything. But anyway, wow, that's cool. Well, Nate, I gotta ask you, I'm sure your different pieces of your story are all over the place, different disparate pieces of your background and everything. So I was just going to kind of to bring those that might be listening to this and then
Hmm.
they're going to go listen to those other things and find them.
Mm.
When did you first throw a disc? What kind of
Oh,
is that genesis for you?
well, I was a toddler. My father was into disc golf in the mid to late 80s. I believe he was first playing with his friends at work in Dallas Fort Worth, and he started taking us when before I even have memories really. uh, I, I would say the first disc golf memories I have, though, we would go play night golf. That's what we called it. We would go get a light that they used for fishing bobbers. That you like
Yeah,
click
I've seen
in. I don't know
those.
if you've
Sure,
ever
the
seen
little
those that
ones.
you click in, and we would tape them on the edge of the disc. And I just remember thinking it was the coolest thing ever to play disc golf at night. And so I played a lot when I was young, from ages like 5 till I was maybe 12 or 13. I played a lot with my dad and a couple of my friends, and then I didn't really play at all once I started playing other sports in middle school and high school. And then it wasn't until I didn't make the football team at UT Austin, I tried to walk on there, that I found disc golf again. I saw a basket on campus there, and I was like, hey, I know what that is. And I joined the disc golf team there and just became hooked. And I learned all about tournament disc golf. And it was as soon as I played my first tournament, it was on. I was full on hooked and had kind of found my source of competition again that I had
You
been
tried to
missing.
walk on at UT?
Yeah, I was
What
football was
position were you playing?
I was a wide receiver. Yeah,
Huh.
football was a huge part of my life. It's really big in
Texas,
Texas,
sure.
obviously, and I got pretty good at it. And I was quick, and I was catching touchdown passes, and played 3 years of varsity and had some pretty good runs in the playoffs. And I almost played football D1 AA up at Harvard. I was recruited to play up there, and I almost committed to it, but I kind of pulled out and decided to go to UT Austin and try and walk on there. I felt like I was good enough to play for them and fast enough to play D1, but didn't quite make the team. I was a little small, a little light, and Mac Brown was actually still the coach at the time.
Oh,
So
I'm a,
when I
I'm a Sooner, right?
yeah, I know.
Yeah, we can get along anyway. Yeah,
Yeah.
all those Mac Brown years, he
Yep.
was the coach of our nemesis, right? And
Yeah.
him and
Yeah.
Bob Stoops back and forth all those years.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good rivalry, one of the best, but didn't make the team, and it was pretty devastating at the time. But I'm glad I didn't play, and I'm super thankful I found disc golf.
Picked up a disc, started playing with a college. I
Mm-hmm.
assume it's like a club team, as it
Yeah.
is at a lot of the bigger universities. It's not the smaller ones, like the Emporia States of the world. They're making it part of their athletics department, but a lot of the bigger universities, it's still considered club. So I assume it was like that at UT. Probably still
It,
is.
it was club. It still is club, and actually, my first tournament was the collegiate championship at out there at Hippodrome.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. So
Yeah.
then did you finish school and
Mm-hmm.
decide to like hit pause on that career, whatever it was going to be, and
Mm-hmm.
keep on throwing discs to see where it took you? Is that the idea?
Yeah, I just became honestly just addicted to tournament disc golf. I played the collegiates, and then I played one advanced tournament in 2014, and I won it by 10 strokes. And then I moved up to open, and I started playing for cash, and I was doing okay. I certainly wasn't, a prodigy or anything, but I got to 990 pretty quick, and just loved competing in the disc golf scene in Texas, in Central Texas, just thriving tournaments every weekend. So at a certain point in 2015, I was still going to school, but I quit my job as a server and just started playing tournaments as much as I could and started training. And then I started learning about, the bigger tournaments and kind of keeping track with what where Worlds was and where the national tours were. And I remember, I distinctly remember watching the 2014 World Championships with Ricky and Paul, their
Yep.
battle. I remember watching that one live with my dad, and I was like, this is what I want to do with my life. Like,
Yeah.
this is too cool. And yeah, and then I met Simon Lizotte and Avery Jenkins at a Deep in the Game clinic in Austin, and watched him throw 700, 800 feet into a field. I'm like, this sport is unreal. Like, and so yeah, when I graduated college in 2016, I drove straight to Oregon for Beaver State Fling and A tier and Salmon
And
River
never
disc golf
left.
tournament. Yeah, and I just
And you
was like,
never
this is
left.
amazing. Yep, I was just traveling in my Prius. I'm like, this lifestyle is I was meant for this.
You waited tables. I waited tables.
Yeah.
I think the skill set that you either carry into doing that job or that you have to learn really quick to do that job is underrated, because not only are you juggling lots of things at once, but you're having to talk to people,
Mm-hmm.
and you're having to keep a certain sort of face no matter how chaotic things are happening that you can't control. You know what I mean? Like if the
Mm-hmm.
kitchen's screwing up or something like that, it's happening, you still have to go out in front of that customer and put a smile on your face. And come up with an explanation on the fly and come up with
Mm-hmm.
a solution or a way to try to make them happy or a way to fix the problem. I don't know about you. I feel like, I eventually went into sports a little bit with some mic work for AAA baseball and then into radio and then to doing some of what I do now when you and I get to work together.
Mm-hmm.
And looking back, I feel like some of those skills got developed when I was waiting tables at a Chili's,
Yeah.
and just
Yeah. I definitely learned some communication skills and just being able to relate to people and
right.
yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so you leave Texas, you go to
Mm-hmm.
Oregon, you start playing. You got the same gift that a lot of us have gotten from the sport, which is, before I came really into the sport, I didn't get a chance to travel very much. I, in my case, had some fairly traditional, some fun jobs, but fairly traditional, ad agency and some things like that. But I
Mm-hmm.
didn't get to travel nearly as much as I get to now. And, a huge percentage of the places I went in the first year and a half, once I started working for the PDGA, I was going to those places. I was going to that entire region of the country for the first time. And so you've gotten to do much of the same. So what are some of the favorite, obviously Oregon for you was a big deal, the Pacific
Yeah.
Northwest, but what are some
Yep.
other areas, coming from Texas and
Mm.
then going out and going, wow, okay, I really could get into this.
Man, I think that, it's a big one because the United States is just so vast and it's so diverse. And my background is at UT. I studied biology, and I've always been into wildlife and just any nature and geology a bit. And so I was a little kid. I felt like a little kid driving around the United States for the first time, trying to go to every national park. And some highlights are probably Zion National Park
Oh
in
yeah.
southern Utah, and just Utah in general. The desert is beautiful and just so vast. And the Pacific Northwest, definitely the Cascade Range and the Olympic Range, the
Mm-hmm.
Olympic Peninsula. I don't know if you've been up there.
No, I haven't.
That's
That
a special
sounds,
place. The Puget
yeah.
Sound and orcas and oysters. But in 2017, my partner and I at the time were traveling in a '98 Ford Econoline van that was built out, and I'd always wanted to go to Alaska, so we drove. Worlds was in Georgia in 2017,
Mm-hmm.
um, and Beaver State Fling was the tournament before Worlds, and it was 2 weeks before. So if you can imagine that, it was clear across
Wow.
the country. So instead of going to Worlds that year, decided to drive to Alaska, and so we did that. We did the Alcan Highway, and we went over to Banff and Jasper, and just drove through the Icefields Parkway. And I would say that was one of the more memorable trips. And then getting to travel to Europe and Asia, and
That's right. You've gotten to do
I
some of that and compete.
yeah, disc golf has taken me all over the world. Yeah, I've competed in Asia and Europe and played in
New Zealand
Taiwan,
and
and yeah, and I would say New Zealand is the my my favorite place. It's totally stolen my heart, and yeah, one of my favorite places for disc golf.
oh, we froze. We'll get
Lost
it
you for a
back.
second.
Internet blinks get the best of us. It's been happening here for the last week. I think it's because of those storms. You were talking, Perk, about New Zealand and about your
Yeah.
heart being there, and then I
Yep.
think that's about where I lost you. So what were you saying about New Zealand?
Yeah. I just, I always, since I was a little kid, my dad first showed me Google Earth. I don't know if you remember when that launched, and
Yes.
I don't know, maybe 2000, 2000 or 2002 or four, maybe. But I just obsessed over maps and would look all over the globe and stuff. And I remember looking at New Zealand, just like, whoa, this place looks insane. All the mountains and the fjords. And then, of course, I'm a big Tolkien fan. And so
Oh yeah,
I
it
don't
was
know
all
who
shot
doesn't
there.
want to go to New Zealand, but I'd always wanted to go, and it was a dream come true. And I bought a little camper van over there. I still own it over there. And so I imagine I'll go over there, for a few months every year, as long as I can. But
It's like Googling, where can I surf in the morning and snow ski in the afternoon
yeah,
in the
that's one
same
of the
day?
places.
And there you
Yeah.
go. New Zealand's like
Yeah.
hit
It's a
number
great
one on
place.
that.
Yep. I just got
Well,
engaged there.
that's right, you did. And I
Yeah.
congratulated you when that happened, but now,
Yeah.
in front of everybody else, that's really really incredible. So that kind of connects a little bit of a loop here because you started by talking about meeting at, did you say the Masters Cup in
Mm-hmm.
23, in 2023
Yep.
or
Yep.
2022?
Last year. Yep. We
Right. Okay.
met May
So
4th. May 4th we met.
all right, so that connects the loop in just about a year.
Yeah.
My story is very similar. Me and my wife was almost like
Cool.
a year, and then a year to the engagement. That was, oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, you did, for you playing and doing the traveling
Mm-hmm.
and choosing life on the road, where you get to make decisions like, am I going to drive literally cross country in this direction to play in Worlds, or I'll just go practically an equal distance in the other direction and see Alaska, and living that life. Where was it, and maybe what prompted the, and maybe for you it wasn't an audible, people just think it was, but what was
Mm-hmm.
it that had you transition from, I'm not just going to compete,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to form a little bit more of a holistic career around this sport, and I'm going to pick up
Mm-hmm.
a microphone, or I'm going to try to get in front of a camera? What
Mm-hmm.
caused that for you? Was it a happy accident or was it intentional?
Yeah, it's definitely layered. I think that the primary reason would be that I really enjoyed uh, you know commentating disc golf. Like I just started doing it, a year into touring. I started doing a lot of post production work and just really loved sitting, sitting with the co-hosts and just watching disc golf and talking about it, and did that for many years. And the secondary reason would be that you really have to make a lot of sacrifices to compete at the top level of anything. Like
Sure.
you can't, unless you're a freak athlete and you just have it. You have to make a lot of sacrifices in your life to to train around the clock to keep up. And my disc golf swing, my backhand swing never quite got to that elite place. I got to 10 20 rated, and I could definitely shoot a 10 40 tournament, and some 10 50 10 60 rounds. And I had some opportunities to win some pro tours, and I even had an opportunity to win worlds in 2018, when I was playing at a high level. But you just get faced with these forks in the road with, hey, should I continue to make all these sacrifices with my finances and my dating life and friendships and socializing and you know name it, and
Right.
continue to train for disc golf and try and make this dream a reality? Or should I try and kind of perfect my other skills behind the mic and kind of pursue a career in that, which is also very rewarding for me? So it's definitely a, a sacrifice to not be competing as much as I used to. It's hard, and I love competing, and I still have that fire to go out there and play, and I can still play at a semi high level. So, but on the other side, I love what I'm doing. I love working with the disc golf network. It's honestly, it's a dream job, and uh, right now I don't really feel like I have too many regrets. I think you know a little bit of me is like, man, if you would have just trained a little bit harder instead of just frolicking around with your friends all the time, maybe you could have won a couple titles, and your career would have gone a different path. But right now I'm pretty happy with where I'm at, and being able to contribute to the game that I love still.
But not to, this is me not letting you sell something about yourself short, because When I came to the PDGA, the 3 years prior to that, I worked in radio, and I was an afternoon show, like drive time show host. It was a music station, but you build content around the music, and
Mm-hmm.
um, and you do a lot of that work as though it were live, even though more than a lot of people realize what you think is live radio isn't technically happening in the moment. It might have happened a few minutes before, and that gives you some
Yeah.
time to do some light editing or some tiny little, technical tweaks before it actually goes on the airwave, but you're still performing it as though it's live, and you have that
Mm-hmm.
similar sort of pressure a lot of the time. And I got to see a lot of how the sausage is made. And I learned very quickly that the things that sounded like, oh, this person just has the gift of gab and that's why they got into radio. I learned how much actual work goes in behind the scenes, and how hard it is to make something sound effortless, or how hard it is to make something seamless, or how many times you're covering for a problem that the public never finds out about, whether it's a technical problem or you planned for something to happen and then the phone didn't ring, or then the
Mm-hmm.
co-host didn't say the thing they were supposed to say at the right moment, and now you have to cover that and the audience can't be the wiser. And all of those things, they take a lot of work. And I've
Mm-hmm.
gotten lucky enough to be one of only a handful of people to watch you work when the camera is only showing one angle of you. But I'm seeing all the other angles of what you're doing, and I'm seeing what you did before the camera turned on, and I see what you go rush to do the moment the camera turns off so that you're in position again for the next time. I've seen it in you, I've seen it in Earhart, I've seen it in Terry. And what how do you prepare?
Mm-hmm.
How do you make it look? This is going to sound weird. How do you make it look so polished and easy when I can tell it's not? It's hard and it's dirty and
Mm-hmm.
it's sometimes, and it takes a lot so that end result is polished and easy looking. How do you prepare for that? What is your
Mm-hmm.
process, to get ready and prepare yourself for chaos?
Yeah, I think that the the fine tuning of the preparation with, like, audio, microphones, and communication with your producers and all that, you kind of have to go through the fire there and learn some of the hard way. But the preparation for the content, I've always felt like, the as long as I'm passionate about the game and about, you know, the players, and I have that genuine interest in the tournament and the story that's being told, from tournament disc golf or the tour, that all just, like, it's able to flow out of me. The moment that I kind of, lose any interest in the story that's being told, or I don't feel like it's a good story, and who really cares out there, that's when content itself gets hard, and you just have to kind of make stuff up. But right right now, I'm still so genuinely interested in the tour. I think it's awesome. I love sports, and I think that this is one of the better sports, in the world. And it just keeps getting better every week and every year. So short answer is just stay passionate, and it's actually pretty easy.
What is your goal? We all play when you and I get to work together, we sort of have something of a role that we're playing, right?
Hmm.
And the lines blur intentionally, right? Because you don't want it to become stiff, just
Hmm.
like any broadcast team for any sport. But generally speaking, there's sort of the play-by-play, sort of the straighter of the character's role. There's the
Hmm.
color, sort of the analyst, sort of the often the person maybe that plays or used to play, and that's common across all sports, right? And then
Yeah.
there's sometimes one or two other people that are, in our case, right? There's the person on the course, or there's,
Hmm.
the person that's specializing in one little thing that maybe you throw to every now and then. There's so we all play our roles. So when you're playing the role that you're most commonly known for, which is the on the course
Hmm.
role, what is your goal there? Like, what is it that the product that you're trying to deliver, given your opportunity? What are you trying to do there?
Yeah. So I've always felt like, with golf, the story of who's going to win and who's leading and what they need to do, that all tells itself, right? With the numbers. I mean, we get to see the leaderboard. We can just compare it, but there's so much more context that a viewer can't see. So I'm really trying to to bring them deeper into the moment. Like I want to tell them about the wind. I want to tell them about the footing. I want to tell them about, you know, the tree that they have to get around and the specific angle, the stuff that the cameras can't see, and then, you know, add any context of like, hey, this distraction just happened, or, you know, Calvin and Zach Melton are talking about this specific thing, and just trying to really add context that the cameras can't see and the people at home watching can't really see.
You really latch on, you and Earhart both. You really latch on to sometimes those details that you know are important to add context, but that are essentially invisible to the viewer. I think it was at Dynamic Disc Open. I think it was I when I came up there and was on site for Tournament Central, and then was able to go out on course around you guys during the week.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was around Earhart. It was somewhere, I can't remember which round it was, but we happened to be near, I want to say it was Paul Macbeth's group, and he threw a shot. And for some reason, I was a little bit closer to the group than Brian was. Maybe he'd had to step away to go live. You know, you always step away so you're not loud and, you know, distracting to the players.
Yeah.
And just before Paul threw a shot, I heard him say, kind of to no one, he kind of like was talking to himself, something along the lines of, well, here's a shot I never tried, or here's a shot I never practiced, or it was something in the vein of, you know, I never thought I'd be in this exact spot. So now I'm throwing something I didn't expect to be throwing.
Mm-hmm.
And then he did it, and it was, you know, a bullseye type hit from, you know, distance, and it was incredible and everything. And so I walked over kind of near Brian, and I just casually mentioned to Brian, oh, Paul said he never, you know, practiced that shot. And Brian immediately turns to me like wide eyed. He goes, what? Wait, what? Like he just intuitively knew something was there.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, tell me what happened? What? And I said, well, right before Paul threw that forehand, he said something like, well, here's a shot I haven't practiced. And immediately he's on his phone texting, you know, production going, I have something about that shot. Come throw it back to me, you know, and he's running off and getting ready to do that. And I've seen, you know, I know you're doing the same kind of thing. Like you have a gift of seeing not only what other people can't see, but of picking out from that what's important. And that's really fun to watch. And it's fun to watch that happen from the other side of the camera and seeing you scrambling around and, you know, doing that. That's really cool.
Well, cool. Thanks, Grant.
It's a gift.
That's a nice compliment. And yeah, it's you know, really want to make it an immersive experience for people. So, yeah, that's what I want to be able to provide, is those little details I feel like can really bring our viewers in and make it a nice experience instead of just, you know, seeing what the score is that people get on the holes. So thank you.
I want to phrase this question carefully, because I don't want it to imply that there's anything wrong or amiss, because there's not, but, and there's certainly plans in the works that you're privy to knowing, some that even I'm privy to knowing, that they'll be revealed when it's time to reveal, at least in terms of disc golf broadcasting. But those things aside, for you, what do you hope some of the evolution of disc golf broadcasting, what direction do you hope it goes into? Do you expect it to go into, you know, with regard maybe to what you do now and how you hope that evolves into something slightly different or slightly bigger or slightly whatever? Like what is it that you foresee, hopefully within a year, within 5 years? And I'm not just talking about, well, I hope we're on ESPN. I mean, who doesn't hope disc golf is on? So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking more about stylistically, quality, content. Where do you see, or where do you hope you see going that you're like, that amps me up, I want to be a part of that?
Yeah, totally. I think that right now, with our limitations on cameras having to follow cards around, is that we only get so much of the story that's being told about the field that's there,
Mm-hmm.
and how difficult the course is, because without like context of other pros failing, it's hard to know how hard a shot is or how hard a hole is. When you watch a PGA Tour event, you almost see the whole field playing it. They
Right.
have, it's live the whole time, and you see people in 30th place, 40th place, like chipping on a hole, and they get to talk about, oh, this part of this approach is this difficult, and this green is hard for this reason. And when we just see like the first two, maybe the first three cards, and everybody's just like shredding, and there's less context. So I think it would be great to see other people deeper in the field,
Mm-hmm.
and so we can have a better idea of how this field is playing against, instead of just like how the best 8 players in the field
Right.
are playing. And that, in the future, we'll have stationary cameras on holes, which we are starting to get that a
Yeah.
bit. But we'll just have more. If there's more money, we'll have more cameras, and the network will be cutting to different and deeper cards, and we'll be able to tell more stories. I think that the story about the cut would be great to hear.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we give enough attention to how difficult it is just to even make the cash each week. So it'd be cool to like have a last cash camera and follow someone's journey on the last like 4 holes, and see what they had to do to avoid bogey and get that last birdie to, like, maybe make $500. But being in the cash is miles better than missing that cash line.
I like that approach. I like the approach of, and I like this in other facets of life too, really. So why not apply it to a sport, especially a sport like disc golf? The approach of the story is so much bigger than just, a fact. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if I
Mm-hmm.
said that very well, but to your point, we can see for ourselves who's winning.
Yeah,
There may or may not be a powerful story in that. There's going to be a good story there, and it's going to be told as it should be.
it will be
Sometimes
told.
it's a more powerful story some weeks than others. But if you look deeper, there are other stories too that are worthy of being told if you can just get enough resources to tell them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
I totally see your point. I get that. And I think that would be, that's an example of a way that disc golf can remain, as they say, keep disc golf weird. I feel like that's a way that disc golf can remain a little bit different if we manage to keep the focus on stories as opposed to just the podium,
yeah,
you know?
cool.
So,
I
and
agree.
we have every power to do that. So
Yeah, we do.
why not keep doing that? Um, and that's another cool observation that you made a minute ago when you were talking about if we could only show more of, it sounds negative, and I know you don't mean it negative, and neither do I, but if you only could show more of failure, it helps
Mm-hmm.
you see the rarity of the successes and the incredibleness of the successes. Years ago in the 90s and the early 2000s, I was hugely into NASCAR. And I
Nice.
would sit there at the college I went to in the Commons area and turn, no one would be there on a Sunday afternoon. And so I'd turn the TV to a NASCAR race because it was a big screen and the TV in my dorm room was, tiny. And I'd be sitting there alone in this massive room that normally could hold, 300 people or whatever, watching a NASCAR race. And people would come in and they'd be like, what is this dork doing? And I'm watching this NASCAR race. And I was into it enough that I was seeing the nuance. And they'd come in and they'd go, that looks like a bunch of cars in a row going 45 miles an hour. And I'm going, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but because they're all going the same speed, you don't recognize they're going 200 miles an hour, not 45 miles an hour. And they'd go,
Mm-hmm.
well, why is that hard? And I would point out, well, the driver of that car wears white gloves. So if you watch the windshield of that car, look for the flashes of white. Those are his hands, and you can see what he's really doing in the car. And they go, I had no idea. And I'd go, well, now you need to go to a race, because you go to the race and suddenly it becomes apparent what wasn't
Mm-hmm.
coming through the screen, how much power and speed and danger and all of those things. It was the same thing for me. A friend of mine was really into hockey, and we don't have a hockey team in Oklahoma. and they said, go to a game and it will transform the way you watch it on TV because you'll
Mm-hmm.
see it in real life and then it'll make TV make sense. And all of a sudden you'll realize, stuff. And they were right. And I think your observation about if you can't go and watch a disc golf pro tour or even a PDGA major, the talent there is extreme. If you can't go, well, at least we can try to show you what everything else looks like so that then you appreciate the top.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? That
That's
was
a good
really
comparison.
long-winded, but
No, it's a great comparison, Grant. I like it. Yeah. NASCAR is hard. It's brutal on those drivers.
have you ever been to a NASCAR race?
Mm,
Or
uh,
any big auto race of any kind?
I've definitely been to the Texas Motor Speedway outside DFW. Yeah, I think I've been to a NASCAR race.
NASCAR or
And
maybe Indy. I know
yeah,
Indy used
no,
to race there. I don't know if they
I
still
think I
do.
have. I've definitely been to MotoGP at the Circuit of the Americas.
There you go. Same
That was
thing.
sweet. Yeah, really, really cool.
It's just I was always struck by um, how loud the engines are,
So loud.
and the first couple of times a car goes by, my eyes jump further ahead because
Mm-hmm.
the noise suggests speed, but you don't appreciate just how much that engine has to work to get that car to go that fast. So you hear the noise and your eye kind of darts ahead of the car, and then the car sort of seems to be lagging behind, and you're like, oh, that car's not really that fast, when in truth, of course it is.
Yeah,
You
you're flying.
can't get used to the optics of it for a while. And then once you do, it snaps into place and you go, oh my gosh, these people are crazy.
Yeah, they
They're
are.
a special kind of crazy.
Yeah,
So
they are.
anyway, that's funny. Well, so I guess we can start to kind of wind this down a little bit. Let's go here. You still dally's probably not nearly respectful enough. You still play
Mm-hmm.
and keep a connection to the game. What are your intentions there in terms of balancing now in a unique
Mm-hmm.
way that you're one of very few people that can truly do this? You because there are a lot of people that play, then they sort of retire from playing, then they pick up the microphone. And that's a great way to do it. And it's a rare way to do it, but a handful
Yeah.
of people can do it. Nate Doss is a great example within our sport,
Yeah.
right? That did it that way. So is Valerie, for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're in a situation where you're keeping a grasp on the playing in your own unique way. What
Mm-hmm.
has that been looking like for you in terms of the way you intentionally do that? And do
Mm-hmm.
you intend to keep whatever pattern up, or are you going to change things up there?
I wanted to commit full time to the disc golf network to kind of show them, how serious I was about, in improving my craft uh, and doing this full time. And so I had to kind of give up the dream of, becoming a champion out on the pro tour, but I can't completely give up playing.
Right.
I love this game, and I think if I completely stopped competing, that it would be hard to maintain that same passion that allows me to succeed as a broadcaster. So I do it really because I love to compete. I love to play tournaments. I love to, throw the disc and knock down birdie putts and a little bit of it is, I would say, fueled because it kind of helps to validate, the words that I'm saying. If, I'm a
Mm-hmm.
1,000 rated golfer and I'm in tune with, why someone's 1050 and what it takes to get there and what it takes to, rip a disc 80 miles per hour. I feel like it just, allows me to kind of be a little bit more in tune with the modern game of disc golf.
Right.
Yeah, so a little bit of both, but mainly just because I love competing.
How are you meshing that in though? Are you not playing for a portion of the year and then making
Mm-hmm.
up for it during something of what the rest of people might call an off season, or are you trying to
Mm-hmm.
pepper things in? How are you doing it, and do you expect to continue to do it that way for the foreseeable few years?
Yeah, so I'm working about 80% of the Disc Golf Pro Tour and PDGA Major schedule, So
Right.
that's a pretty, intense workload, and
Yeah, it's a heavy lift.
it involves a lot of travel. I'm not quite sure, but maybe 12 or 15 different states and a few
Hmm.
countries. And so, I started the year off in New Zealand and got to, strictly play down there, did a little media work, but really just played. And then I had a long stretch where I didn't play. I sprinkled one tournament, one B tier, Luke Humphreys B tier down in Texas, in between that Texas swing,
There you
which
go.
was
Okay.
great. And then I just played the Masters Cup A tier
Okay.
last week in Santa Cruz, and I might have the opportunity to play the Swedish Open Disc Golf Pro Tour event in Europe, and before I work the booth for a few of those European broadcasts. So I'll play when I can, and ask permission from the lady, if I can stay out for another week and play an A tier on the East Coast, or if I should come right back home. So
I know
it's
how that goes.
it's kind of out of my control, because my first priority is the Disc Golf Network, and
Right.
that's by choice. So um, and I feel good about it. So if an A tier pops up after Deglow, I might show up for it.
Have you ever thought about trying to create almost like a product out of it, like like something of a mic'd up situation where you're playing, you have a live mic, kind of like they do. I think NFL does it and stuff, where
Yeah.
they have a mic on the whole game. It's not that they're going to film the whole game and use that. They're going to edit it down into, cool little 60-second or 5 minute, snippets that have lots of cuts in them of you. But have you ever thought about what it would be like if you were, I had the idea of a mic'd up caddy. I've had that
Mm-hmm.
idea before, and it's
I
something that
like
I want
that.
to do at some point. I've even asked a couple of players about the prospect of, would it throw them off if they let me be their caddy with a hot mic on, and just had someone shoot for 9 or even 18 holes. And I've had a few say they don't think it'd throw them off at all. They think it'd be kind of fun.
I think
And
that'd be great. It's a good
what
idea, Grant.
what if you did the same thing as the player?
Mm.
Are you a person that when you play, are you a chatty person when you play, either with your group, or do you, like, I sometimes kind of talk to myself when I play, but maybe that's partially because I play alone a lot, because I have to sort of steal away from the family when I get a chance to
Yeah.
go play. Are you as talkative in other facets of your life as you are professionally?
Yeah, I'm pretty relaxed on the course. I feel like it just takes a little bit of focus, before you line up your shot to really, throw your best shot. So I like to chat with my friends, and like to have, a caddy if I can, and just kind of talk shop with them, and not necessarily talk about or focus on the actual tournament the entire way. I feel like it can be kind of draining if you're just
Sure.
constantly thinking about what shot you're going to throw, where did you land, how far your putt is, and stuff. So I like to keep it pretty light and chat.
Do you think you're, and maybe you know this from experience, or maybe this is like a thought exercise. Do you think you're the kind of person that, there are pros that have a caddy, and they rarely, if ever, are asking advice from the caddy or opinion from the caddy? And that's not to slight the caddy. That's, I'm just
Mm-hmm.
saying that's just not how that particular pro plays. But then there are other pros who they want the dialogue because it helps them make the decision. So they go and they want the dialogue of what the wind is doing. I could throw this shot like I did 3 holes ago and try to do it again, or I could throw this other disc and do, you know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
do you think you would use the caddy as a tool other than someone carrying your discs to bounce around? There's no wrong
Mm-hmm.
answer here. I'm just
Yeah.
curious what you think you would do.
Uh, I've always felt like shot selection has been an easier task for me than, shot execution. I feel like some players, are just loaded with talent, and they sometimes have trouble choosing the high percentage shot. I've always felt like I was able to see clearly, like, what shot should I be trying to throw to card a birdie or avoid the bogey. Have just struggle a little bit more on the execution side of things, and the nerves really, I feel like is what I've really struggled with the most throughout my career. So the caddy I've always felt like is more just to kind of chat with and keep my mind off things and kind of keep the heart rate down and keep the nerves down rather than like asking them, hey, like what shot should I throw?
Cool. Interesting. That's fun. That's fun to think about, and how I think a caddy is a tool, for lack of a
Mm-hmm.
better term. I mean, it's a very personal tool, but is something available to a player, but so uniquely used by each unique player. And
Yeah.
I feel like that may be a source. You were talking earlier about stories. I feel like that dynamic is going to become a more and more fruitful source as the
Mm-hmm.
sport continues to mature.
Mm-hmm.
And I could even see, I don't know if you ever followed ball golf at any point in your life or in your
Yeah, I
career very
do.
closely.
I
I
do.
remember when Tiger Woods became Tiger Woods, right?
Mm-hmm.
And burst on the scene as a early 20 something year old. He had a caddy named Fluff Cowan. And, Fluff had a big bushy walrus mustache, and he smoked back then. That was a little bit more forgivable than it is now. He smoked on the job, right? As he's carrying the
Wow.
bag, and his name was Fluff. I mean, come on, that was his nickname.
Yeah.
And with him, all of a sudden, not only him, but there were 3 or 4 other caddies that had always been anonymous that all of a sudden kind of had a caricature in the
Mm-hmm.
world of golf. There was a woman, I don't remember her last name, but her first name was Fanny. She's British, and she was Nick Faldo or some European golfer's caddy, and had been for years. And she was unique because she was one of the only female caddies in a male dominated world, right? And there
Mm-hmm.
were 2 or 3 others. Bones McKay, I think is his last name. He was Phil Mickelson's caddy for years. So you had all of a sudden, in the blink of an eye, there was this other source of stories for the world of golf. And it was the fact that these 3 or 4 caddies had a personality,
Mm-hmm.
and they had something to contribute to the bigger story. And ever since then, it always seems like there's been 2 or 3 caddies, even as those have maybe retired, the ones I just mentioned. There's always been 2 or 3 kind of caddies out there that have created a little bit more to pull stories from.
Mm-hmm.
I'm waiting kind of for that sort of thing to happen in disc golf.
Yeah. I think in the future that most of the champions on the tour will have dedicated caddies that they train with, that the caddy is very familiar with all of their equipment and their game and their tendencies. And I think that there are some right now that are invaluable to players. Like I think of Tom Sven and Missy Gannon.
Sure. Yeah.
No question that the relationship that they have allows Missy to play at a higher level. And when I was caddying a lot for Paige Pierce, I really felt like we trained together and we would go out in the field and throw, and I would even go as far as like getting her to kind of change her footwork and match it up with their putter shots and her drivers, and I knew her game so well. And she won a lot of tournaments with me on the bag. Not saying that she wouldn't have without, obviously she's one of the
Right.
goats, but I felt like I was bringing value to her. And I see that in some other relationships out there on the tour. And I really don't doubt that in the future that most of the champions will have caddies that they pretty much work with full time. I mean, we see it with I feel like Brad Hammock and Paul Ulibarri have a really good relationship that really helps Paul kind of play at a higher level as well.
What are you seeing in Page first, but also there are several
Hmm.
other players that it feels like an all too common story arc lately in the game.
Uh-huh.
The proven player that hits a setback,
Mm-hmm.
typically injury, and then has to come back from it, and it's like the world shifts a little bit on them while they're away, because
Mm-hmm.
the talent level at the top is morphing so rapidly that if you step away from the game for even a very short time, when you come back, the texture has changed even just a little bit. And
Mm-hmm.
now the one person that you used to maybe battle has become 3 people or 5
Mm-hmm.
people. And I'm not talking about whether you're a person like Paige, who, was constantly at the top battling for wins, or even if you're a person who was mostly battling for top tens, or maybe you're a person who is mostly battling for making cuts. That circle of people you're battling has, even 3 months later, has seemingly changed. And
Yeah.
what are you observing? We'll start with maybe Paige, but you
Mm-hmm.
also get to observe others. You've observed Paul, and his comeback. What are you observing in these
Mm-hmm.
players in terms of that challenge? Because I feel like it's a little bit understated. It's, oh, they're great, they'll be great again. And I feel like that's selling
Mm-hmm.
it really short.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, greatness in golf is so hard to achieve. It's such a difficult sport to dominate in. That's why I felt, like Tiger Woods became one of the most famous athletes, across all sports, is because it's a hard sport to dominate in. It's just, you can't be more physically dominant like you could in football or basketball. And it's just all between the ears. And with Paige, I think that when a player gets to the top and they're winning multiple world titles and they're winning every other Pro Tour event, and people just come to expect that. And so, when they fall from that grace,
Mm-hmm.
they're like, oh, wow, she's washed and she doesn't have it and she's never going to be the same. And so what I, the first tournament back from injury, she got 10th at chess.com. And so she's still able, to play the game. And I was actually impressed with her there. And I'm impressed with her process right now. And I think that she still has a ways to go physically to just be comfortable, because I still see a little bit of hesitation in
Mm-hmm.
the footwork on the tee pad. I think that it'd be hard to not have a little bit of hesitation when you have such a gnarly injury as she did.
Right.
And really, this past week at OTB, I really felt like her mental game was kind of getting back in the right place. I think that, over the last, like, even before the injury, Grant, she was kind of, I felt like her pre-shot routine had changed and it was kind of hurting her. Felt like she started playing a little quicker, because back in her prime, not to say she can't reach it again, but back in her prime, she was really, really good at collecting herself and focusing before she threw the shot. And then there was a period where she would step up on the tee and just kind of go right into the throwing motion.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't see the same focus. So this past week at OTB, especially that final round, I kind of saw that same focus come alive again. And I have no doubts that she's going to win on the Pro Tour. I think she's going to do it pretty soon.
Mm-hmm.
And once she does that, I think the confidence will kind of snowball again, and the hesitation with her ankle, might drift away. So it's a process, and the fans out there can be pretty tough when someone at the top is not doing what they used to.
Yeah, and they're constantly. I mean, I saw Paul posting a recap of his last weekend, talking about how he struggled putting all
Mm-hmm.
weekend, putted great
Yeah.
in warm up, and then wasn't doing it well in the thing. And how he, quote, in his words, and I might be misquoting slightly, but in his words, he found it, or he found something, or he figured something out, or something to that effect, on like the 17th hole of the last round.
Yeah.
He feels like that literally was where he finally had the aha moment. So it's just a lesson that even at the topmost level,
Mm-hmm.
when something gets a little off, it can take them a while to go through the mental process of checking the boxes. Is this the problem? No. Okay. How about this? No, no. And it can take a whole tournament. And then finally, on the second to last hole
Mm-hmm.
of an entire tournament, you go, there it is. That's what it was.
Yep.
I can't believe I missed that, but there it is. And now, I can work on that for a day or two and get that solved and be right back. The analogy that came to mind when I was, now that I'm not as much as you, but in the unique situation of following the game so closely, was a razor blade. Because if you ever see a razor blade under a microscope, down lower, it's still a pretty wide piece of metal.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you finally get to that very top, one or both sides bevels in and creates the point, the super
Mm-hmm.
sharp point. And the top level pros are living constantly on the sort of plateau, if you will, of that point. They're living up there on that last little slope between the section where it's thicker down below, where it's sort of vertical and parallel. They're living there back and forth, and they're teetering over one and they're teetering over the other, but they stay there. And then they get hurt, and they know how hard it is to get back up to that top area. But the rest of us don't maybe sometimes give it the appreciation it deserves. They know, and they know that one random good round doesn't count. They know that to get where you're living up there, in Paul's case, remember when he started the year, he said, don't even judge. I'm not even judging anything until after the Texas swing.
Yeah.
And
right.
even though he had, I can't remember if it was chess.com or what week, maybe it was Waco. He had a round somewhere in there that was really, really good. And everyone went, Paul's back. And Paul himself was like, no, I'm still 3 or 4 weeks away from when I'm even going to start judging myself.
Yeah.
Cause they know how hard it is to get to those sort of sub points before you're back there at that top. And we've been watching Paige inch her way there. We watch Paul inch his way there. We're watching others, inching their way back there. And I think maybe the greater fandom is maturing just the way the rest of the game is, and finally getting to the point where they realize, we're a little impatient sometimes.
I like the razor blade analogy. It's a good one.
I think that it explains that teetering of, a pro at the top, but that doesn't mean they're winning every week, but they're up there every week. And then it explains the fall off and the much more difficult climb. That first 90% of the climb is the harder part than that last 10 where you can kind of live and teeter up there.
Yeah.
So it kind of explains it. I've never been accused in my life of being deep.
No, I said it was steep. It's a steep climb.
Steep. I thought you were telling me I was deep. I was like, you're too generous.
That's funny. No, it's a good analogy, Grant.
Well, bro, we're going to wind this down just because we could do this forever. And, people that might be actually still listening, probably have things they need to do, or they're done driving to work and they're done sitting in the parking lot waiting for us to shut up. But as we leave, something I like to ask everyone I get to talk to, what are you looking most forward to in the near future? We're sitting here, I'm looking above at my wall calendar because I'm old school. Everyone's in your area, at least on the pro tour. They're in your area right now. The PDGA major season's ramping up. We have more and more top level pros that are masters. And so they're playing in those too. And that's cool. What are you here in this next month, 6 weeks, 2 months? What's giving you motivation that I can't wait till that happens and it's psyching you up?
Yeah, I think outside of disc golf, I'm going to go float some rivers and go find some hot springs here in Oregon. And then, Stockton was a big hit. There were 1,500 spectators there on Sunday. It was a party, people were having fun. And I know Portland has been a big event.
It's got a great reputation.
Couple thousand people, and I love Glendoveer. It's an amazing property, and I think everyone loves Milo McIvers. So those are going to be two of the better events of the year, I would say. And I'm working both of them, and I get to interview the champions of those events, both on the FPO and MPO side. So it's an honor to do that, and just looking forward to, walking those courses and contributing to the broadcast. And then Catherine and I are driving to Minneapolis for the Preserve, and then we're flying to Europe the day after the Preserve. So really, really looking forward to the European trip. June 24th, we're flying to Iceland, and we're going to be there for a few days, maybe find some thermal pools over there and some, just go see some scenery, and then, the European swing. So super grateful for all this.
One of my favorite movies is Walter Mitty, which was a ton of that was filmed in Iceland, even if in certain instances he was supposedly somewhere else, but it was actually filmed still in Iceland.
Cool.
So yeah, you should watch that if you haven't seen it, or if you haven't seen it in a while, you should watch it again right before you
Yeah.
go, because
That's Ben
then you'll have
Stiller,
like
right?
context. That's the Ben Stiller one. Yeah.
Nice. I just listened to Ben Stiller on David Duchovny's cast. It was a good listen.
He's an interesting guy that's been around that industry. Speaking, you and me talking about being around this industry, he's been around that industry because of his parents,
Yeah. I
since
was
he
just
was a
talking about that.
baby.
It's
So
cool.
yeah, that's super unique.
Yeah.
Really, really valuable insights and stuff. He's an interesting guy. He really is. All right, brother. Well, hey, I hope that you and I get to cross paths before you go to Europe, even if it's digitally only through some kind of a broadcast, maybe at the Preserve or sooner. But either way, I'm sure we will by the end of the year with Pro Worlds and
Yeah.
USDGC and some of those events. I know when the PDGA Major schedule and the Disc Golf Pro Tour schedule, when they have those wonderful overlaps that happen, a handful of times a year, those are
Yeah.
always very special weeks and
Yeah. It's
stuff like
fun,
that.
man.
So
Love
we'll look
working with you,
forward to
Grant.
that.
Look forward to it as well.
You are indeed the disc golf verbal Bob Ross with the pictures that you paint. So keep it up, man. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you later. All right.
Thanks, Grant. You take care, man.
All right.